Yes, yes, I have seen that you are the chosen one, and you will save. Oh, wait, there's a bunch of you here? Ah, well, whatever. I'm sure someone watching is the chosen one, so I'm not technically wrong.
You are the chosen one!
And even if I am wrong, I'm sure we can interpret the prophecy in a really convoluted and totally unreasonable way so that it still makes some sense, right? In reality, while prophecy has been a tried and true way to keep viewers engaged and constantly thinking about who or what the prophecy is referring to, more often than not, prophecy ends up slowly tightening a noose around the writer's own neck, shackling the unprepared in a trap of their own making. From the latest season of Percy Jackson and the Olympians to Neo and the Matrix, what exactly makes prophecy such a tricky tool to use in a good story, and what foundations need to be laid in order to succeed at fulfilling these prophecies while also revealing the answer to the audience in a meaningful and satisfying way. The main problem with prophecies is that inherently, they are future predictions of story beats yet to come. You might be asking why that's a problem. I mean, isn't it good practice to know where your story is heading next anyways? Yes, but this raises several issues all at once. Think about it this way. If I told you that by the end of this video, a giant bat would come flying out of nowhere and hit me in the head while I wasn't looking, you'd probably be wondering how I could possibly pull that off. I mean, it's night and it's not like I have any open windows, but I said it was going to happen, so I can't just lie about a prophecy now, can I? So what are you now thinking of for the next 30 seconds or however long your short-term memory is? You'd be on high alert for any rogue flying objects ripping through my walls at top speed. But I said it would happen by the end of the video, so you have no idea if it's going to happen in 5 seconds or in 5 minutes. This can have a negative effect of keeping your attention off the content of what you're watching and just trying to spot the moment that the prophecy might be completed. Another issue is what happens if I change my mind later down the road? Well, sucks to be me, I guess. Prophecy locks in a future action that must now happen no matter what, whether the writers want it to anymore or not. And if they don't, they now have to find creative ways around it instead. The future is always changing and evolving as a story is written, and no matter how certain the author is about certain details or even endings, this can all change in an instant as new ideas arise or side plots get expanded. The timeline of a prophecy directly affects the weight of these payoffs too. Some prophecies are ending level events, where they fall on the side of the hero will eventually defeat the Dark Lord, and are really only realized by the end of the series. Others are mid-level quests, where they prophesize lead-ups for obtaining special items or weapons, or defeats of smaller godlike villains. Balancing the weight of a prophecy is a difficult task, as having it be something that resolves immediately doesn't add anything to the story, and if it was going to be completed so soon, why even have a prophecy about it in the first place? On the other hand, when prophecies foretell the final defeat of our main villain, the road to getting there can become very convoluted and mistimed when the length of a show or game is uncertain. Most strikingly, nowadays it doesn't feel like enough just to have a mysterious prophecy anymore. Writers seem to always want to subvert the most obvious interpretation of a prophecy and give the viewers some shocking twist that we could never have seen coming. Sure, that works to some extent, but if that twist ends up being too much of a stretch, or even such a ridiculous interpretation that it throws the viewers off, in my opinion, that just defeats the whole purpose of including a prophecy in the first place. The show that really got me thinking about prophecies though was Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Now, I've been a fan of Percy Jackson since the books came out, but at this point, I've basically forgotten all the significant plot points, so everything I'll be talking about will only be canon from the show, not the books or even the movies. Now, the main overarching subject we need to discuss is the idea of multiple interpretations. As you can probably guess, we're talking about how prophecies end up being all mysterious and confusing, because what's the point of a prophecy if it just spells everything out, I guess? One of the ways they can do this is by introducing multiple possible candidates for the prophecy to apply to. In Percy Jackson, we are told that the great prophecy speaks of a child of the Big Three, who upon reaching the age of 16 would determine the fate of Olympus. Now, we still don't know the full prophecy since Percy decided not to let Kronos finish talking, but we can surmise that given the extreme lack of half-blooded children running around camp, that this could only refer to a very select few demigods. The most obvious, of course, being Percy himself, the son of Poseidon. However, with the reintroduction of Thalia, daughter of Zeus, we are now given multiple candidates for the one who might hold the fate of Olympus in their hands. This is a common way to keep the audience guessing as to who the prophecy would apply to, and prevents us from immediately narrowing down the way that the story might end. Also, if you've been keeping count, we've still got one god to go who we haven't heard about a child from yet, but knowing the way that these stories go, I'm sure a child of Hades is just around the corner. Maybe even someone we already know? Either way, having Percy and Thalia become a point of contention where we aren't sure if this is a situation where the protagonist is not actually the hero that's talked about, holding this great importance to the story, really adds to the intrigue and speculation that prophecies can be great at introducing. This concept, while powerful on its own, is handled slightly differently in the Harry Potter series. The prophecy by Sybil Trelawney spoke of a boy born at the end of July, who possessed the power to defeat the Dark Lord, but stipulated that neither could live while the other survived. Though we all know at this point that the prophecy refers to none other than Harry Potter, the boy who lived, it is later explained that this was ultimately Voldemort's own actions that led to the One being decided on, not a preordained person. There were actually 2 boys born from strong wizarding families that met this criteria. And the interesting certainty of it all was that the candidate was chosen based on whomever Voldemort went after, rather than there being a singularly correct choice from the very beginning. That's right, folks, we could have had Neville Longbottom, the boy with the lightning scar. This type of prophecy is truly an inevitable one, where even if Voldemort managed to somehow get rid of one possible adversary, another one who fit the bill could rise to take their place, endlessly standing in his way no matter how powerful he became. Prophecies like these, which basically sit there waiting for someone who fits the bill to come along, kind of feel like a cheat code sometimes, like me making a prediction that it'll rain at some point, then yelling that I was right after it eventually rains sometime this year. But thankfully, Harry Potter gets around this flaw by specifically dictating that in his attempt to defy his fate, Voldemort actually created the hero actively, and it's not just some random kid flailing around with their wand that defeats him in the end. Another glaring flaw that prophecies can run into has to do with the way that prophecies are usually worded. Going back to Percy Jackson, Clarice actually gets a quest to recover the Golden Fleece in order to save Camp from attack. Her quest is worded as so: "You shall sail the iron ship with warriors of bone. You shall find what you seek and make it your own. But despair for your life entombed within stone, and fail without friends to fly home alone." At first, we think this means that Clarice is destined to fail, pushing away her friends and ultimately unable to achieve the goal of her quest. However, as Percy points out later when they start to become friends, he thinks it actually means the opposite, that if she didn't have her friends like Percy, Grover, and Annabeth, that she would have failed. But because she has them, she is able to fly home, albeit alone, and succeed at returning with the Golden Fleece. Ignoring the classic iambic pentameter that the Grecians love, that last line is intentionally misleading so that it can imply doom when in fact the true result is simply a condition of her success. Use some commas, Oracle. Is it that hard? When used correctly, these kinds of misinterpretations are a fun way to introduce a little spice to the story and keep us on our toes as we— what the heck is that, a bat? Oh, I get it. Because I said a giant bat would hit me and it's a bat and— alright, anyways. I don't really have a problem with intentional wordplay like this, since prophecies are as much to confuse the viewers as it is to the characters in the show. My real issue is when writers use super broadly worded prophecies in their stories, because it's obvious to me that writers do this when they have no idea how they want the prophecies to apply, just that they need to give themselves as much breathing room as possible to make sure it gets fulfilled. Take Star Wars, for instance. Basically, I'm not even sure whether we get the full prophecy at any point in the story. It's been a while since I watched this, and sources are disagreeing online, but it essentially seems to boil down to: a chosen one will come, born of no father, and through him, ultimate balance in the Force will be restored. I mean, what is this really saying? That the heroes will win and restore balance to the Force? Well, no duh. Unless this is one of those dark, depressing stories where the heroes lose, I assume that the Jedi will win against the evil Sith, and that there's a hero out there who will end up doing this. These super vague or very broad prophecies do absolutely nothing to add any suspense or theorizing if they just tell us, hey, the good guys win. That was the most likely outcome anyways. Talk to me when it's a prophecy about them all dying and losing. Maybe then I'll be interested in how it actually goes down instead. Oh look, it's God of War. So what if writers really want to circumvent prophecy, not because they simply don't want to end their story like that anymore, but rather because they intentionally try to trick the viewers into thinking the world is doomed or a death is inevitable? Well, the best way I've seen this done is by flipping our preconceptions of what we consider fate in the first place. The God of War series notably utilized prophecy in many of their games to a reasonable effect. In God of War Ragnarok, however, we are introduced to the fates of the Aesir lands, the Norns. While countless mythologies have some kind of interpretation of the Sisters of Fate archetype, like the oracles or other soothsayers, the Norns are not simple fortune tellers. It's revealed through Kratos and Freya's confrontation with them that the Norns do not predict the future with a crystal ball and some magic powers, like I do, but instead are highly probabilistic beings who predict the actions that individuals will take in any given situation. By interpreting these likelihoods, they can form a clear picture of how characters will react and the most likely outcome of these actions. They're so good at this that mortals believe their words to be prophecies rather than highly tuned guesses, since they turn out to be right almost all the time. Almost all the time, yes. It's originally foretold that Kratos would die in the mural prophecy painted by the giants from the early scenes of the game. In an attempt to avoid his fate, Atreus searches for any ways to prevent this from happening, even going so far as to work with Odin himself. The entire game is basically grounded by everyone trying to break free of fate itself, but the cruel twist of irony that we learn from the Norns is that fate is a mere illusion, and it's their character and the decisions that truly lead to the tragic endings of their stories. Only by changing themselves for the better and seeking a different outcome than the ones fueled by greed or anger can in turn prevent this fate from becoming a reality. Kratos does this by shifting his nature from the rage-filled, vengeful god of war to the caring yet still firm father to Atreus. He chooses to believe in his son, rather than to try and control his actions, ultimately helping him to defeat Odin in their final battle. This and all his other interactions on his journey where he chooses not to end lives unless he must are the small culminations of character development that keeps him from dying needlessly by the end. As for Odin, he is the utmost example of the exact thing that the Norns warned them about. When Atreus tries to reason with Odin, telling him that he can still change his fate by changing himself for the better, Odin cements his prophecy of falling in Ragnarok by refusing to change his choices, telling Atreus that he will always sacrifice others for the sake of knowledge and that he will never change. This interpretation of how prophecies work places the burden of defying our destinies squarely on our own shoulders and makes it all the more impactful when characters are unable to escape these inevitable outcomes. Another example of this is with Neo from The Matrix. Once again, a situation where the wording of the prophecy is way too broad, somewhere along the lines of, a human born inside the Matrix will learn to control the simulation and free all of humanity by defeating the machines forever. However, this is shown to be an intentional choice, as this prophecy by the Oracle was meant to double dupe the characters who heard it. To go over it simply, in Matrix Reloaded, when Neo confronts the Architect, he explains that this prophecy was put into place by the Oracle to flush out any inevitable anomalies that would arise from an otherwise perfect prison for the humans. Because they could not prevent such an anomalous being in the first place, the machines instead sought to control what this anomaly would do and eventually lead them to the choices that Neo ultimately faced, rebooting the Matrix and accepting humanity's enslavement, or saving Trinity, dooming all humans in the process. This fake prophecy by the Oracle is shown to be bait for the sake of containing the One, but after Neo brokers a peace with the machine leader in exchange for defeating Smith in Matrix Revolutions, he ultimately sacrifices his own life in order to protect both worlds from destruction. In recognition of his selflessness, the machines agreed to a ceasefire, allowing those who wanted to be removed from the Matrix to leave freely. When asked, the Oracle states that while she doesn't have divine prescience as the humans thought, she instead had the belief that her prophecy would come true and that the day would come where humans and machines could finally live together in peace. This bluff by the Oracle plays an important role in the story of The Matrix, as while it seemed to pull the rug out from under us in the second movie, we are shown by the third that it's not prophecy that mattered in the end, but the belief and strength in humanity that ultimately did fulfill this optimistic prophecy. So does prophecy actually do that much to enhance the stories that use it? Sometimes yes. The very idea of a prophecy lingers in the back of our minds, and a well-executed consequence that ultimately leads to a realized prophecy can give us that impressed feeling when it all pans out. Of course, this also means that failing to live up to the high expectations that prophecies inherently create will deeply affect our ratings of it. Whether writers have a good plan for how fate will play a part in the story, or even how they'll circumvent their own prophetic traps, there are many ways to use this device to achieve a better story overall. If you want to see more of these types of videos, consider subscribing to the channel. I'm still experimenting with how I want these videos to look, and subscribing really helps me see that you guys like what's going on and want to see more of it. If you're also feeling a little clairvoyant, maybe you can predict what the video next week is going to be about. I promise, you have all the pieces you need to figure it out. Thank you so much for watching, and keep an eye out for more.